Sam's on as well.
Easy. Okay, so we're good.
Looks like we're good.
Sure. Of the two speakers would be great.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I did.
Yeah, I would. Is that Anastasia on? Which one is that? I gave it to her. That's why you don't have it. Well, you were dealing with the collapse when I saw it.
I know what it was, but you know how you think.
I know. Sorry, my life.
I couldn't think of it.
You're all set with that one, yeah, okay.
Oh, look at Beth being the hostess with the mostest. I should have done that. Look at you. You got the hammer poised and ready to
I'm
go.
ready, I'm with you, Beth.
Thank you so much. Here. Are you gonna go see the drowsy chaplain? It's on our calendar.
So Beth, the hostess with the mostest. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling this special meeting of the Newington Board of Education to order. It is Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. The time now is 7:01 p.m. Please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does anyone have a mic on or volume on their computer? You can.
Yeah. Okay, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Michael.
Here.
Danielle Drove. Dr.
Here.
Here.
Richard Laveriere.
I think he's online. Earlier he seemed to be online. Yeah.
Amy Parati.
Here.
Sam Sharma.
Here.
Jessica Weaver.
Here.
Anastasia Yap. I have Mr. Laveriere and Miss Yap absent.
All right, thank you very much. I want to welcome all of our guests tonight. The Honorable Mayor, Beth Del Buono, all of the town council members, town manager, town clerk, dual role, and our distinguished guests from the state. Thank you all so much for being here. At this time, I'm going to go to agenda item B, which is our public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. If you would like to share a comment or ask questions, you can call 860-665-8659, or if you are online with us, you raise your hand and then I will call you in the order that you raise your hands. We do limit public participation to 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the room that would like to participate as a part of the public? All right, I don't see any hands up online, no calls yet, no one in the room. We are now going to move on to agenda item C, which is our new business, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Brummett.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fletcher. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our two guest speakers who will have some very important information to share relevant to state education funding. At the end of the table is Representative Jeff Curry. He's state representative for the 11th Assembly District, East Hartford and Manchester. He is serving his 5th term in the State House. He's the new House Chair of the Education Committee, and he was the former Deputy Majority Leader. He also serves on Appropriations, Judiciary, and Commerce Committees. Jeff was a former East Hartford Board of Education Chairperson. Joining him this evening is Lisa Hammersley. She is the Executive Director of the State Plus School Plus State Finance Project, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that strives to increase funding for K-12 education in the state, with a particular focus on increasing equity in the space. Prior to joining that organization, she led budget and policy work for a legislative caucus for over 8 years and worked in the governor's budget office developing policy proposals and analyzing capital projects. So why are they here? I saw them present twice recently, once at the Hartford Area Superintendents Association and once at the CAPS Executive Board meeting. And their proposal for state funding really will benefit Newington. And they're going to show just how much it would benefit from Newington if it were to go through. So besides that, though, that I'd like them to share with you what this legislation would mean. And frankly, it's something that I'm going to endorse and hopefully testify later this week in writing, unless I pull a really low number on the in-person testimony, because I believe this is going to be good for certainly our kids and many, if not most of the kids in the state of Connecticut. So with that, I'm going to boot up their presentation. You just turn the light on green to your mic, and you'll be good to go. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely, and thank you for having us. As she mentioned, I am Jeff Curry, State Representative and the current co-chair of the Education Committee. And education funding has been something that I have been at for a number of years. As she mentioned, my role as a former Board of Ed chair and tackling it from that end to ensure that the resources were coming into our district that were not as equitably distributed as they should have been or could have been and hopefully will be. Building upon the successes that we had back in 2017 when we actually created an ECS formula that we were actually going to abide by rather than providing block grants to districts depending on who held leadership positions and who had a little bit more power over others. We are taking what we created then and building upon that to ensure that we're providing a student-centered funding model for all kids in all public schools. And when we say public schools, that means our traditional public schools, that means our charter public schools, that also means our magnet public schools. This is going to take an investment, and that's exactly what this is. This is an investment by the state of roughly $275 million to be able to fund all of those types of public schools. And what this would do is speed up our current ECS formula for those districts that we're going to see increased funding as a result of that 10-year phase in. And but will not touch the districts that we're going to be phased out. They will stay on their current plan. But I will say that the proposal that we have come up with takes care of all public schools besides the 10 who will remain net neutral. So all but 10 districts in the state of Connecticut are going to see the benefits of House Bill 5003. We have taken this roadshow everywhere and anywhere to be able to better explain what it is we're exactly trying to do here. Working alongside Lisa Hammersley and so many others in our coalition, we are at a point now where we have folks talking about education like they never have before. Aside from funding, everybody is focused on ensuring that education is a top priority in all aspects this legislative session. We are now the third largest committee after appropriations and finance, so that in and of itself kind of tells you where we are and where our priorities lie as a legislative branch. And we have banded together both sides of the aisle to ensure that we're going to be able to get this through. We appreciate coming in front of folks such as yourself to ensure that you have the information to hopefully better provide you with the tools necessary to take the message and get that out to your own residents, your own constituents, families, but most importantly to kind of reach to the other branch that we work closely with, and that the executive branch and our governor. We will see his budget in about a week and a half, or actually a week from today, we will see that. This proposal will likely not be part of that budget proposal, but that is not to say that we as a legislative branch are going to ensure that we demonstrate our ability to lead and to govern and to prioritize education for the first time in a very long time. Lisa is here today to kind of go through the nuts and bolts, but we're happy to take any questions. And I'm a captive audience, so anything beyond funding you would like to discuss, I am here for it all day. Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
So we're going to go through a very quick PowerPoint that will talk about the components of the policy proposal that are contained in House Bill 5003. So a little bit about the organization that I lead. It is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, as previously mentioned, and we essentially take data and develop policy solutions to increase equity in the education funding space in Connecticut. We do strive to be a trusted resource to policymakers, boards of education, superintendents, other school district leaders. So to the extent that there is something that our organization can do specifically for the Newington Board of Education, we're happy to have that conversation and see how we can assist you. Next slide. So for the past few years, we have been working on the student-centered funding bill. In 2021, we were calling for an immediate full funding of the education cost-sharing formula. However, when the third round of federal COVID relief was approved, we understood that asking the state to invest $300 million when $1.6 billion was provided by the feds would probably not be a realistic goal at that time. So in 2022, we modified the bill such that we timed the expiration of the one-time federal dollars with the immediate full funding of the bill. So what we're seeking in this legislative session in House Bill 5003 is that timing of the enactment of this policy to coincide with the expiration of the ESSER dollars. So it would go into effect in fiscal year 2025, the second year of the biennium. The key components of the bill, first, as Representative Curry mentioned, it fully funds ECS in fiscal year 2025. I know that Newington is one of those districts that are considered underfunded according to the formula. So your district is being phased in annually until, under current law, it would be fully phased in fiscal year 2028. So we're accelerating that phase in by 3 years. And as Representative Curry mentioned, it does not alter those towns that are overfunded, and we have a slide that pertains specifically to those districts. There are other components of the bill that will impact Newington, so we'll go through those in greater detail. But essentially what the bill does is as follows. Under current law, different types of public school students are funded with different arbitrary block grants. So if you are a student and you're attending a RESC magnet school, you get a different grant than if you're attending a charter school, which gets a different grant than for a child that's attending a BOE program, which gets a different grant than if you're a child that's, attending a chef magnet program. So all of these different grants are at different levels. And then there are different ways that the choice operator can receive the balance of the funding needed to educate that child. So for example, Newington, if you have a child that decides to exercise choice and decides to attend a CREC magnet school, you get that child counted in your resident student count for the purpose of your ECS allocation, but then you also get sent a bill from CREC annually and at a level with which they determine. So it's kind of like a fixed cost for you. Under the bill, the state would be paying CREC with a ECS determined grant fully by the state. And then CREC, because they are receiving the funds necessary to educate that child according to the ECS formula, CREC would no longer be able to charge you tuition. So every time a child exercises choice and attends one of their magnet school programs, they would be 100% funded by the state, and therefore the local district is no longer responsible for paying a share towards educating that child. In addition, the bill does not alter the fact that Newington would still be able to count that student in their resident student count. So in my town of Southington, for example, we have 71 kids decide to exercise choice and attend CREC. Those 71 kids are coming from all different schools, all different grades. It's not as if Southington can achieve any efficiencies and reduce a teacher as a result of 71 kids leaving its district. So the bill does not alter Newington receiving that support for that child, not only because of the fact that you can't achieve efficiencies, but also because you're still responsible for special education and in some cases tuition. So the bill treats all public school students the same. With the exception of the CTEC program, which is 100% state funded. So this includes your BOE program, this includes your magnet school kids and your charter school kids. All of the kids would be funded according to their need. And for those kids that are exercising choice, the cost is entirely borne by the state. So by eliminating tuition billing, another key point, you're eliminating friction that sometimes exists in some parts of the state more than others, where sending districts don't want their children to exercise choice because then they are financially responsible for a portion of their education when they leave the district. This does not pertain to Newington because you are considered an underfunded town according to the formula, but there are some towns that are receiving annual reductions because they are considered overfunded. And this phase out was put in place in 2017 when the ECS formula was enacted by the General Assembly. The bill does not alter the phase out. The phase out would continue as is under current law. However, because we are eliminating regular education tuition billing, 76 of the 88 towns actually receive a benefit, a net positive as a result of the bill. So that is, a topic of discussion up in the General Assembly. Obviously, legislators don't like their town losing ECS funding, but this bill certainly doesn't take from them in order to give to others and exacerbate that loss. It's the loss that they were already planning since 2010. This is an urgent issue now. As you all know, you received a significant amount of one-time federal resources. So by timing the expiration of the federal dollars with the implementation of the bill, it allows districts to know that they're going to have greater state support. So maybe some of the expenses that you all decided to incur with that expense that you can continue into the future. Our organization calculates the economic and racial funding disparities in the state. So unsurprisingly, we are a state that has education funding system that is built largely off of property taxes, and we have differing abilities to pay in the state. So currently there exists an almost $800 million difference between our most property-rich communities and our least property-rich communities, but then also our districts that serve 75% majority white districts as compared to all other districts. So by the state making this investment, it's going to reduce those funding disparities that exist in the state of Connecticut. And we also talk about all of the positive benefits that an investment in K-12 education means for the state. They are telling, and they're something that, especially the administration, I think it would be helpful for us to uplift, but not only higher test scores and higher graduation rates and academic achievement, but also higher earnings for life, reductions in adult poverty, and increased state economic production into the future. How you can support student-centered funding? This more than ever, the governor and the legislature need to hear a loud and constant call for investment in K-12 education. Similar to local boards of education, the state of Connecticut also received a significant amount of one-time federal dollars. And so there are going to be every interest and every stakeholder group is going to be up at the LOB advocating for investment in whatever it is that they feel passionately for. So that's why we have been working tirelessly to build the widest coalition that building has seen. We have not stopped with just education groups. We've made the connection between education and the realtors, for example. The tribal nations have signed on, civil rights organizations. So there's very wide support for the bill, but we're just looking to continue to build the momentum so that we can hopefully get this bill across the finish line come June. What you can do, as Representative Curry mentioned, talking to your state senator or your representatives is fantastic, and having them talk to their leadership and letting them know that this is a priority for their constituency. The bill is being heard this Friday, as was previously mentioned, so it's moving very fast. So to the extent that you all want to submit or provide testimony in person, that would be fantastic. Also getting your local municipal officials involved. We do have the support of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, so I know that they are also showing up. We have a statement of support up on the website that Representative Curry asked us to put together. So to the extent that you want to add your name, we would love to have that. And also just building community knowledge about the need for the state to make this investment and why it's critical at this time. That is the end of the PowerPoint. I did make a one-pager for you all that talks about the specific impact to the town of Newington. As you can see, it looks at each individual component of the bill and how it impacts you. And as we're currently estimated, I would like to throw out a little caveat here. We will get updated data when the governor's budget is released to include all of the new student demographic information. So this data is based off of 2022 information. I will get new data next week, so all of these numbers will be updated. I don't think it's going to fluctuate wildly, but they will fluctuate, and we'll certainly update them and send it to your local representative so that they can share it back out to you. So as you can see, full funding of ECS immediately is estimated at $900,000. Another piece of the bill that I actually didn't go over at that slide, so I'll go over it now. You do participate in the Open Choice Program. Currently, you receive a flat grant that ranges based on how many kids you bring into your district. And then you also receive half of the child in your resident student count, and then the sending district gets to count a half of a child in their resident student count, which makes no sense.
Not confusing at all.
And so what the bill will do is it'll change it from a flat grant to a grant that reflects the student need. So if you're taking in children from the city of Hartford, or the city of New Britain, I'm guessing those are probably the two districts that you might be taking, probably Hartford. You will be getting a grant that reflects that student need. So instead of receiving the flat grant just the flat grant plus your half in your resident student count, you will receive, if it's coming from the town of Hartford, like a grant like $15,000. So you'll be receiving much more to educate that child, which will further incentivize participation in the Open Choice Program. But your town does get a significant gain as a result of the inclusion of open choice and actually having open choice be funded according to student need. So the overall net positive impact to Newington, we estimate at $2.4 million.
And I do just want to, I'd be remiss if I did not say a thank you to both superintendent and representatives Farrar and Turco for their support and the understanding of how important this is and the need and urgency to get this done now. It's hard to, I think, look at numbers like this and argue that $2.4 million in fiscal year 25 won't go a long way in your district. So hopefully we can all kind of band together and get this done.
And there'll be a press conference Friday, as I understand it?
Yes, there will be a press conference 10:15 on Friday afternoon or Friday morning prior to the public hearing. And the public hearing on Friday is solely for this particular bill. And also important to note is that this bill was introduced by leadership, both the speaker, the majority leader, and myself as the chair of education. And typically education bills are just run through the committee and not simply individual bills. So the fact that this came out of leadership also says a lot about where this is going.
Well, thank you very much. I'll turn this back over to Dr. Fletcher to entertain any questions.
All right. Does anybody on the board have a question or a comment you want to make at this time? Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I've kind of been a huge fan of the school and state finance project since my grad school days. We used a lot of your data, so it's really helpful. I think a lot of times it's hard to make numbers tell a story, and I think it's really impactful to see the 2.4 is a beautiful number to me, and much needed. So I guess my question too is, I just want to emphasize too that this takes effect fiscal year 2025. So to close that kind of gap, in terms of kind of where your group will be doing, will they be studying the impacts of the full funded going forward? And how does that look?
Absolutely. So we get asked frequently, or we know and understand that funding is not the answer to all of the state's education issues with regards to performance. So I know that we are going to be very intentional about 5 years out. It's not going to be an immediate change in terms of our performance, particularly in our lowest performing districts, but we do think that funding is obviously a key component. When you have 30 kids in a Bridgeport elementary school classroom with one teacher, no additional paraprofessional support, Clearly, that is not a good learning opportunity for the children in the classroom. And those kids have additional learning needs. So hopefully after full funding of ECS and after this bill takes into effect, maybe 5 years, 10 years later, looking at how performance has changed will definitely be a focus. And there's also been a bill this session, Senate Bill 1. I know the Senate is looking at trying to ensure that districts expend monies appropriately and to look at the expenditure of funds. So the detail of that bill has not been fleshed out, but we're certainly going to look at performance after full funding and see the impact that it's made.
And one of the other things too is that there's always so much tension and competition in Hartford with regards to funding, and it's always the different types of public schools after one another, and that takes up so much oxygen in the air that we don't have the opportunity to truly focus on what's going on in the classroom and really being able to provide the necessary resources and whatever the case may be to our educators. That sometimes is simply getting out of the way and letting them actually do their job. They are professionals. We should respect that and have some level of deference to that. But this will hopefully kind of put a button on that funding conversation so we can again focus on what's going on in the classroom.
All right, online, Mr. Leverrier.
Hi, good evening. Dr. Brummett, you just started sharing the screen. Could you close that out for me?
Nice to see you, Richie.
Hi, Jeff. Hey, fun fact. Long time ago, many years ago, I won't say how many, Jeff and I sat 2 desks down from each other, working for the state in Hamden. Hi, Jeff. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hey, so I have my my issue though is if a student's going in Newington, why are they being counted half in Newington, half in Hartford? They should be counted in Newington, right?
Well, I think that the Hartford's perspective would be that they are still financially responsible for special education. And a half a student in their resident student count isn't much of a financial benefit to the city of Hartford. So because they still have financial responsibilities with special ed, I think that it's appropriate to keep that half a kid. We also didn't want to start changing where a resident student count, where kids are counted for the purposes of resident student count. There are some strong feelings that is double funding. And in fact, there is some interest and appetite to take. So for every kid that decides to exercise choice and attend CREC, there is some desire by some policymakers to take that kid out of your resident student count entirely and have that money follow the child to CREC. So by not modifying any resident student count, we're kind of trying to not further that conversation.
Yeah, and what that would mean if we remove that funding is $100 million from our 10 most distressed municipalities. And so you can imagine where they are currently right now, and so to pull $100 million from them and where that would leave them, it would be counterproductive to what we're trying to do.
And not just those municipalities, though. It's other towns that have kids participate
Correct.
in the Chef region by exercising choice. So it would impact you. It would impact Farmington, Southington, Simsbury, Avon. There would be a financial hit for everybody.
Right, but that would be for CREC, as you said. But like, I'm just talking about if we're bringing in students, we should be getting to count them for funding. Anyway, that's my point. Thank you so much. Hey, great to see you, Jeff. Take care.
Sure.
It would also result in the town of Newington, though, receiving a reduction of support as well. So it's whether or not you want to clean up the system and remove the double funding, or whether you want districts to maintain support, especially considering that they're still responsible for special education.
Yeah, it is very important to note that this bill does not touch special education. That's a whole kind of beast in and of itself. But it doesn't mean that the work that we're doing is not done. So let's get this done and then let's have that conversation.
Thank you. Anyone else at the table? Seeing none, I want to say thank you very much. It's very informative. I'm looking forward to this. And thank you for the hard work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I am. All right. I will now segue over to the board or the superintendent's budget proposal for this evening. But I would also like to thank members of the town council for being here this evening, Mayor Del Buono, Town Manager Kapinski, and our state representatives that are here. Much. Did I say town council members or no? I can do that. Go ahead, Dr. Fletcher.
So what I would like to do is hold up any questions or comments that you may have during the presentation, except in cases where you need clarification on something. That way we can move through it very smoothly. We can take notes and then we can have a time to question after. Thank you for your indulgence.
All right, so once again, welcome and thank you for coming this evening. So in short, I want to always bring forward in budget presentations that all of this goes right back to the classroom, and everything I'm going to propose this evening links directly to the work that we're trying to accomplish this year. Our theory of action for the district is that we will operationalize SRBI through our PLCs, and sorry about all that alphabet soup, but what that really means is having meetings about students, talking about their needs, talking about their classroom environment. And our big bets are that if we develop equity teams at every school and make sure our PLCs are running well, then our students will improve. We're already seeing glimmers there, and I think we're going to see more of it as the year goes along. So our overarching goal is to reduce the achievement and opportunity gap for our most neediest learners, as well as all of our students. We also have our superintendent and board areas of focus that were discussed back in the fall, which included preschool expansion, continuous work on our mastery-based report card, social emotional well-being, security enhancements, community partnerships, and accelerating learning and COVID recovery. One of our projects right now is our Leadership Academy, where we're identifying students in need, but we're identifying them to go into a program called a Leadership Academy that they can attend after school to get a little extra help. So positively framing that for our students. Wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to celebrate some of our successes this year. That last week we were joined by our state representatives where they honored Anna Reynolds as a school of distinction. That honor was given to Anna Reynolds due to their high achievement in math overall, but also their high achievement in math for their subgroups or their high needs groups. So it was a dual celebration. That little picture at the top shows all of us that were there that day, and we're lucky enough to have Representative Farrar and Representative Turker with us this evening. Right as we go through the schools through an instructional rounds process, we are seeing implementation or focusing in on implementation of culturally responsive practices in our classrooms as well as in our PLC meetings. Every school in the district now has an equity committee. That has happened this school year. Members of the DECA program, that's our distributive education program, are continuing to achieve success at competitions at the state, national, and international levels. Today, we had the Advancing Inclusive Principal Leadership Network visiting E. Green and Anna Reynolds. And I will tell you that those representatives from that committee, which is a statewide, and in fact, it has representatives from out of state, were very impressed with our inclusive practices and our equity practices at E. Green and Anna Reynolds. In fact, they will be inviting those two schools and representatives from those schools to present at a statewide conference in the not too distant future. We continue to increase our professional learning opportunities for our hourly staff, especially the para and tutor support. Per state law, we have done that this year and it's been very successful. We've been recognized by the National Association of Music Merchants as being the 2022 Best Community for Music Students. We have had, thanks to the efforts of Steve Farisi's office and Kim Davis, we have now increased our staff of color full-time from 4% 4 years ago to 7%. And obviously we want to keep that going upwards. For our part-time staff, we've gone from 7% to 23%. And I actually need to stop and before I go any further and thank my team, Steve, Wendy, Lou, Karen, who's probably online, and my administrative team for all the work they did to get this budget presentation ready. Jay Salerno and I don't know if he's online or not, we're doing this like right up until about half hour ago. So little last minute tweaks, and especially when the boss here screws up the formatting on the page and then all heck breaks loose. So we are really doing great work with our PLCs, analyzing disaggregated data by race and ethnicity, which is the key to learning how to close the opportunity gap. With the support of CIRC, Newington High School is refining their SRBI process, which is scientifically research-based interventions, to create meaningful interventions for our students who struggle either behaviorally or academically at the high school level. We continue to diversify our texts and ELA classrooms so that our literature is both a window and a mirror for our diverse students. In other words, they see themselves in the books that they read. And Steve Farisi and I are chairing a wellness committee, which was an outgrowth actually that the board had recommended last year to explore ways in which we can support and promote staff wellness. I think we all know how stressful the post-pandemic classroom has been. I think it's important to review our student demographics because that really drives a lot of our programming decisions. Looking at it historically, you look at the very top of the chart, which I will admit was my first year of high school. We had very low diversity. You can see back then it was 1% special ed, 504, less than 1% EL, and 25 open choice students. Fast forward to 2023, and I highlighted the last 2 years because even in the last year, things have changed. But currently, our special ed rates are 16.6%. Our 504 rates are 6.7%. Our EL rates are now 8.9%. Free and reduced lunch, 32%. We have 123 students in open choice and about 192 students in magnet schools. And that's why that earlier presentation is so important, because that's well over $400,000 in resources that we do pay to magnet schools. Last evening, when I briefed the finance subcommittee, they had asked me to break out our open choice statistics by race and ethnicity. And as you can see, our open choice students represent a variety of ethnicities. About 3% or 0.3% of them are white, 3.3% are multi-identified, 10.6% are Black, 8.2% are Hispanic, and 0.3% are Asian. Just so you're reading that chart correctly, the open choice percentage is strictly that percentage of open choice. So the balance of that in that ethnicity category are Newington students. For example, Black students in Newington who are Newington residents make up 90% of the Black demographic. Hispanic students make up the balance of that 8.2%, so 92% are Newington residents, and so on.
So if there's 226 Black students in Newington High, in Newington, 24 home choice, there's 222 from Newington.
There you go. Wait, well, 226 minus 24? Yes. But we're not going to mention what Danielle teaches.
We didn't hear you online.
Oh, sorry. So if there's 226 students on the chart, minus 24, there's 202 students from Newington who are Black, non-open choice students.
And really what this chart shows is that Newington is diverse in its own right. It is not a product of strictly open choice students. We are diverse in our own right. And there's our chart. This continues to change over time, but currently as a whole, in totality, 67% of our students are, sorry, I lost my train of thought. 53% of our students are now white as compared to 67% back in 2011. And you can look at this chart for all categories. The biggest changes are our Hispanic population, which has gone up 11% in the last 12 years. So the Black population has stayed pretty static, as well as the Asian, but our real change has been our Hispanic population. Just to break down further, our ML population, as I mentioned, has continued to grow, and it grows throughout the year. When you look at the grand total over here on the number of ML students, we've gone from 314 to 350 during the course of this school year. And when you look at our schools, for example, today we had our visitors at E. Green. They were in classrooms where 6 or 7 of the students within that classroom were ML students. So they have the highest percentage of ML students in the district, followed by Reynolds. And then you can see Chafee and Patterson are quite similar. You notice the drop off at the high school level and even at the middle school level. And that's because as the children stay with us longer, they test out of being ML. They gain English proficiency and they become no longer eligible for the ML services. I would be remiss in not mentioning that the pandemic aftermath continues to impact our staff and students significantly. We are seeing in our classroom students with significant social, emotional, and behavioral issues. We have our staff members that are extraordinarily stressed by all of our increased student needs. And concurrently, that does increase our substitute teacher costs because they might be out more often due to the stress. Our math learning loss continues to be problematic. We are seeing a nice recovery from the reading loss, but we are still working hard to recover from the math loss. And that's very consistent with state trends. We looked at our turnover rate, and just so you know, this is not unique to Newington. We're actually not as high as some other areas, but we had a 10% turnover in our certified staff year to year, and a 37% turnover in our non-certified. So that really has a lot of organizational impact. Yes.
Is that just for this past year or an aggregate over
I believe that's year to year, Mr. Farisi.
this? Thank you.
And many of our districts statewide don't even have full staffing yet. So we're not as bad off as many, but I do know that almost all districts saw this level of turnover, combination of folks leaving the profession altogether, or doing a few folks move closer to home. That's a common thing year to year, but what I think we saw mainly is staff leaving the profession altogether. So what do our staff and administrators need now? They really need us to continue our current programs. They will need support for the minimal program enhancements that you'll hear about tonight. They do need the mental health and wellness support, and that's both our staff and our students. Continued support and training to increase our proficiency with culturally responsive teaching practices and job security. I had a teacher approach me last week. She goes, Maureen, I just don't like budget season because I get so worried about layoffs. And I said, well, what are you worried about? You're tenured. And she said, well, I worry about my colleagues. So it really impacts people one way or the other. Our budget is designed to maintain critical levels of support, adhere to mandates with very minimal program enhancements. So luckily, we still have our ESSER money, title grant money, and other open choice and IDEA monies that will allow us to keep our expanded programs and security through this coming school year. So we're able to keep folks in those grants. And even though some grant money has dried up, we've been able to move folks to other grants. And I will say one of the grants we moved them to was open choice. There was a substantial increase to open choice funding in Newington this year because of a state law that was passed that increased it by $2,000 per student. So you multiply 123 times 2,000. We would like to add 3 new courses at the high school. Very minimal budget impact, just simply the materials. We don't have to hire teachers. There's teachers there that can already deliver those courses. Survey of Hispanic American Literature, a Portuguese World Language course, and a theater course. We would like to expand pre-K. We'd like to offer 2 full-day, full-week classes in the district next year. Locations TBD. That would open up, each section would allow for approximately 8 typical and 8 students with disabilities. It may go a little one way or the other. That will totally be offset by tuition. We are not adding staff, and we have the classroom space and materials already. We are required by law now, because of the number of students who speak Spanish and are multilingual at the high school, to provide a more intensive program at the high school for bilingual students. That's a state mandate. They give us all of like $10 per kid. However, we are going to add a tutor who's bilingual to meet their needs, in addition to our multilingual staff. A teacher was originally requested, but we brought it down to a tutor to save resources. We also have had a significant increase in special ed students, and pretty similar to the state as a whole. Currently, we have a part-time third special ed assistant director who's in the board's budget. We'd like to make that person's retiring, and we'd like to replace that person with a full-time special ed assistant director. That other half of the person would be grant funded. I'd like to add that we do exit surveys when staff leave our district. And when we looked at why some special ed teachers were leaving, in addition to the issues already discussed, it's because they felt they needed more support. And our special ed administration is spread extraordinarily thin. They do, at my request, they are placing themselves in schools during the week, but there's just not enough of them to go around. We have 3 administrators between 7 schools, and there's just too many needs. And those of you in the room who are educators may have heard of the word CT SEDS that has drained our special ed folks this year. I can tell you more about that on another time. What's not in the budget, as the board knows, we have a plans proposal process that goes through every year. And these were proposed this year, but not included because I was concerned that they would raise the budget up too high. Years ago, long before I arrived, we had 7th grade world language at the middle schools. That was eliminated, and the world language department has been asking for it back for many years now. But to do that at both middle schools would be close to $1 million undertaking. We've been requested for a new engineering teacher at the high school to support the Aerospace Academy and to reduce science class sizes, but I'm not recommending that be funded at this time. A new director of career development, a math intervention teacher at Kellogg, and an SEL counselor for NHS. Unfortunately, today I got word that the grant that I wrote with a high school teacher for that position was not funded. So we did get word in that same email that we got, there is going to be a second round of applications, and we do intend to resubmit. But that SEL counselor and the board, especially the board that's involved with our disciplinary application, understand that we do have a significant SEL need at the high school. And this position would have been focused on giving children more advanced training and avoiding drug use and dealing with mental health issues. So I am hoping at some point that position can come to reality. Then I will keep looking at grant opportunities. I wanted to put out what I call a myth buster. I know there's been concerns over the years that perhaps we're overstaffed or our ratios are substantially different than our colleagues in the area. This chart, and I apologize if it's small, maybe I can make it a hair bigger without wrecking yeah, that works. So these are, every district on this chart is in our DIRG, with the exception of Farmington. And we, in this whole grouping, are considered the highest, having the highest need students. What that means is students who they come from a racial ethnicity other than white. They have free or reduced lunch issues. They are students with disabilities or EL. So of those districts that are referenced on this chart, we have the most significant needs. However, if you look at the student to teacher ratio, we're kind of smack dab in the average here. We have an average ratio of 15:1. And again, that takes into account all certified staff. It's not that every class size is 15 in Newington. I can promise you that is not the case. We are average on administration. I take note that Farmington looks a little lopsided, but they have a lot more school-based administrators than we do. But in general, for districts that are similarly sized, we are really average in most of these measurements, except for we have some more high need students per this chart. And this data is about 1.5 to 2 years old. So you can see some of the data has actually increased. We're now in the 16% range for special ed. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there that we're not overstaffed and we have very high need students, more so than a lot of our counterparts in the area. This is a chart that sort of relates to our earlier speakers. the cost of all these services continues to escalate. Special ed, which we lump special ed and this transportation for special ed into one category. But you can look at this chart from 2016 to present and see some major escalation. What you don't see an escalation is in the IDEA money. Our special ed population continues to rise, but in the last 5-6 years, we've only gotten another $100,000 from the federal government for special ed. Have talked to Miguel Cardona about that. He promises that it's in his budget this year, but he doesn't have total control over that. Our EL expenditures continue to skyrocket because you can see our percentages continue to go up. Cost of magnet school tuition, again, what we heard today could really have an impact on that in future years. And our homeless, I think most people know when a student becomes homeless, we're required to continue to bring them back to the district, and that costs money. Or when people land homeless from other districts at one of our, for example, hotels on the Berlin Turnpike, we have to chip in for the expenditures to send them back to their district. So there's a lot of expense there in the homeless legislation that we have to adhere to. So the moment everyone's been waiting for. But before I go too far, the Finance Subcommittee also wanted me to provide you with an overview of how our grants impact, hopefully in a positive way, our budget. So as you look at the future pages in tonight's budget presentation or slides, these positions are 100% grant funded. So about 23.25 certified teachers, not sure what happened to the 0.75 of that other person, they're in the board budget, is about 1.8 million. Our certified administrators, this is that grant funded position that would be new this year to bump the special ed administrator from part-time to full-time. Our security, half of our security staff is grant funded. Our special ed paras, 32, that's not all of them, but 32 of them are grant funded. We have a credit recovery position at the high school, as well as the ESS program at Wallace, and that's our program that supports students' social and emotional needs. That's all grant funded. We have about $292,000 in employee benefits that are grant funded, for a total of $3.2 million in grant monies that go strictly to salaries or programs. Budget. So last year, our final budget appropriation was $78,660,000 for a 2.46% increase. When the budget initially came to me back, I can't remember when that was, I think December, it was $86,531,000. Since that time and through the iterative process with my administrative team and the finance department, we've cut $2.6 million out of what would have been a 10% increase. And my current budget ask is $83,914,000 or a 6.68% increase. Now I'll get into how that came to be. First of all, before we go further, possibly as we look at these pages, because I appreciate that's a bigger number than you might be used to. We will be continuing to, as we do all the time, look at our budget. A few days ago, I asked all staff to put in their purchase orders for the year, and there's going to be a cutoff, and from there it's going to be frozen. And that'll help us look at what might be some realized savings or less reliance on the non-lapsing fund. Anytime there's a position goes unfilled, we analyze that in the budget. Do we have to refill it? And we always look at attrition. Is there anyone that is leaving that we don't have to replace? So here's sort of the breakdown of where all that budget money is allocated. The most large impact, frankly, the largest impact in the budget is the restoration of the use of the non-lapsing fund. So last year we had to rely on $2 million in non-lapsing fund money. So that has to be backfilled now by allocated money. So that's 2.57% of this budget ask. The rest of this is contractual, most of it, not all, is contractual obligations. This includes all of our unionized employees who have a contract which specifies what their salaries will be next year. That's something we cannot deviate from. That's about 2.23% of this increase. The employee benefits, that includes health, as well as some folks that get retirement funds and other social security benefits, is about 514,000, which I will tell you, looking at my colleagues statewide who have seen much bigger increases in their health costs, this is not a bad number. I've seen really bad numbers over the years in my previous district. Special education costs are back on the rise. I do believe that's yet another post-pandemic impact. This line speaks to both special ed costs and our transportation costs for special ed students. That's about 0.82%. I think everyone's aware of the inflation and supply chain issues. That accounts for about $578,000 or 0.74% of our budget. Curriculum supplies is about 0.43%. And we do hope to have, and I believe we're conservative in planning for $600,000 in non-lapsing fund monies that we can access for next year, which allow us to reduce the budget by 0.76. So that's the total of 6.68%, or a $5.2 million increase. And here's the breakdown again. What this shows you is if we didn't have to backfill the non-lapsing money, the ask this year would have been 4.11%. So you can see the pretty significant impact of that. The rest of this, again, is just routine and normal increases, except for the inflation. There was a question last night by the Finance Subcommittee. What's the breakdown between percentage of the budget that goes towards certified teachers and the percentage of the budget that goes toward administrators? Essentially, looking toward right now this year, it's about 92% of the budget goes to teachers and 7.4% goes to administrators. Next year, 92% goes to teachers, 7.5% goes to administrators. And again, that's reflective of the 0.5 or 0.55, I think it is, addition. We are reducing to our 1.5 certified staff. That is a coach that we are not funding next year, and a 0.5 math intervention person that we're not funding last year. Now, the board at our last board meeting heard about the reduction of 2 literacy instructors who were going back from their increase to full-time during the pandemic back down to part-time. We did look at our grants really hard because both principals were not happy with that reduction. So they were reinstated to full-time based on some grant monies. So that is the difference than what you might recall you heard a few nights ago. Yes.
Just want to clarify for the public, when you say coach, you mean instructional coach? Not.
Yes.
Yeah.
An instructional coach, not the coach of the
I just wanted
basketball
to make
team.
sure everyone knew.
No. No, we do still maintain coaches for all of our teams. So, and this is just another summary. This is also a 3-year look back. So our budget for 2021 and 2022 was the same because we had a 0 increase from those 2 years. Last year was the 78.6 million, and my proposed budget is 83.9 million. Again, the $5.2 million increase, or 6.68%. Implications for any further reductions. We already do rely on the non-lapsing fund, which is always, we're kind of seeing that now where that does get you out of a bind 1 year, but you do it comes back to you the following year. But it did prevent the use of non-lapsing monies last year, prevented any layoffs. Other possible outcomes is, cuts to services or higher class sizes, student mental health concerns. And just anecdotally, this week alone, we have had tremendous mental health issues in many aspects of our district. I'll leave it at that. Legal issues for special ed, if those services get reduced. And as mentioned earlier, student achievement concerns or student learning recovery concerns. School climate, culture, and morale, that is still really tough right now, post-pandemic. Teachers are maxed, and it will hit them hard if services are reduced. They already feel like we don't have enough. And then what things that we could do to offset is, increase our fees, but that often has a negative impact on our, sports fees would have a negative impact on parents, or building uses fees could have an impact on the public at large. This is our 6-year average for board budget increases. It's 1.9%. I don't have a strong working knowledge of inflation, but I think we can agree that inflation was higher than 1.9% over the last 6 years. So it does put you in a slight challenge for these lower increases. Everyone often wonders, well, gee, what are our counterparts doing in the DIRG? Last year, I highlighted Newington in red. We were the lowest increase in DIRG D last year. This year, so last year on this chart, these are all final allocations. These are what the town, if they have a town council or whatever their process is in these towns, these are what those districts got for a final allocation. And for those folks that aren't familiar with the term DIRG, these are districts that are, at least in terms of the State Department analysis, similarly situated to us, similar levels of poverty or special ed or size. But I will tell you, based on the chart I showed you previously, we're one of the needier districts in our DIRG. So just put that out there. Proposed budgets are listed to the right. You know, we are on the higher end, but it's sort of trying to address that we were on the lower end last year. But these are all districts that are similar to us. You can see that Southington and Cromwell are a bit higher than us, and some other districts are a bit lower than us. And again, those are not final. So next steps, we have budget meetings coming up over the next few weeks. I will begin going to PTOs and faculty meetings to talk about the budget. We have workshops scheduled. The dates are on that slide. Bless you. And then we are required to approve the budget by February 22nd so we can transmit it to the town. And then we've been scheduled to present to the town on March 14th. And thank you for changing that. There was a conflict with Beauty and the Beast earlier. You don't want to disappoint the kids. So I will turn the mic back over to Dr. Fletcher for questions.
All right, any board members have a question?
Fine.
Go ahead.
So how many teachers, ML teachers, are there at the high school? Because I kind of remember in the past, like last year adding them and looking at the numbers, it's actually like proportionately not higher than the other schools.
I believe, Steve can help me with this. I believe we have one. Just Tom? We have one, Tom Myler, yep, one full-time. And then the ML teachers pretty much split between some of the schools. But just to clarify on that, the reason we're required to add the bilingual services at the high school is because we have a concentrated number of children who speak Spanish at the high school, and that requires more staffing in that particular area.
Go ahead.
That was my next question. It's like, you know me so well at this point.
We sit next to each other.
So can we get a breakdown for the next meeting of how many students out of those 55, like what languages, like what percentage is actually Spanish speaking? You
At the high school?
At the high school.
Okay.
Or wherever the bilingual tutor is needed, because I thought you
Yep,
said high
that is the
school.
high school. I believe it's about 30, but I'm going to verify that. It's about 30. That was the trigger.
Anyone else? Ms. Weaver?
So I was just hoping maybe we could just kind of go further, maybe like a one-pager or something that's helpful, because I know when we discuss the non-lapsing, many of us know what we're talking about, but I think sometimes it just gets confusing for someone not intimately involved with this on the day-to-day. I think that might be helpful just to kind of show where it was funded, when it was funded, and then when we took funds out of it and how we've had to backfill it, and kind of what that budget journey of the non-lapsing fund has looked like over the past few years, if that's helpful or that's
Absolutely.
feasible.
That would be very easy to do.
Perfect. That would be,
Lou,
I think
that's
that
something I can add to your to-do list for tomorrow.
sorry.
Non-lapsing fund, kind of a history of it.
Just kind of when we took it, when we took monies out, I don't recall how much we put back in, but when we've taken monies out, kind of, and that budget journey, I would say, over the non-lapsing journey fund.
Okay, so online, Richard Leverrier.
Dr. Fletcher, I know that you did say that you wanted to reserve commentary, but I got to do this. I want to give a huge shout out to the elementary schools. The multilingual to English proficiency statistics, wonderful job. We should all be proud of those numbers that Dr. Brummett presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
It's a question, I guess. Can we please get the profile of districts in our area? You did the myth buster. That was
Yes.
nice. Can you send that to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor, I will allow you to ask a question.
I think he ran out of confidence of your with the wonderful presentation of PowerPoint. You think Marvin office?
Absolutely, but you may see something very similar on March 13th. But I would be happy to have that copied off to Town Manager Kropinski. Sure.
Okay. So to help the process along, in a few moments, we're going to open for public participation. At that time, we'd love to have anybody from the town council ask questions. All right, Ms. Drost?
So across the district, I know enrollments are down. Is Newington, and I know, and I'm sorry, I know you gave us this and the stack, it's just easier to give me the answer. Is that a projection? Is Newington enrollment coming down representational of the other districts in the state?
Can I kick that to you, Mr. Farisi, or do you need to research that?
Yes, no, I do not. I appreciate it, and I'm not mad one bit. So I would share, yes, in general, enrollment is declining throughout the state. The numbers that we are able to present, and we can get to you tomorrow, show that we are very insignificantly decreasing next year. It was within the teens, the numbers that we will be going down. So, and that's spread across the K to 12, continuum. So, we're not anticipating a real decrease in enrollment next year.
Supt Wagner.
Thank you. But to go along with that, I know last week we did talk about, Mr. Friesen, you did a great job of explaining the potential new or the projected new housing developments, and that, my notes could be wrong. I wrote down like plus 217 potentially, but only potential students, right? But only 3 actual now. So just how would those numbers affect us, and how many is that in the next year or in the next 3 to 5? I think that's just important information to make sure everybody grapples with.
Sure. So I continue to work closely with the town on just trying to understand when developments are going up, how far along they are in the process, when certificates of occupancy are being distributed and folks are moving in. So those numbers are kind of, right now, we're on a hold pattern. I think right now the 3 developments that are going up, some might start to be finishing, in the springtime, in the summertime. We don't anticipate a significant enrollment increase for next year, but I think the year after is when we start seeing some of the housing have available occupants that might have families and children in them. And what we'll do is keeping the board abreast of, the numbers and when those housing developments or apartment developments do have certificates of occupancy, and when we do anticipate to see more enrolled children coming into which schools and the ones that they'll be impacting.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Weaver, then you're next.
So wondering if we could get just a little bit more detail or a cost breakdown. I just don't know how it will be affected because I haven't looked in the booklet yet here. It's more than a booklet, but in terms of the inflation and supply chain, I know a lot of that was in the area of transportation last year. We talked about it in a couple different areas. So if we just kind of can get concrete on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Drost?
Apparently Jess and I spend too much time together. We really don't, but our solar panels, when will they be done and will that help us financially with the electric rates and stuff? Because I know that that's a big right now with the inflation.
I'm going to kick that over to Mr. Jacomowitz.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Status of the 4 solar projects are 3 are on track at this point for a tentative online condition in June of this year. That would be the 3 elementary schools, Green, Chafee, and Patterson. They are experiencing their own supply chain problems getting the right electrical equipment. They've already been out, have the arrays up on the roof at all 3 places. They're just missing the gear they need to finish the job. And last time I talked to them about 2 weeks ago, they were saying tentative delivery dates at the end of May right now for that. So they're hopeful that that will be done by July 1st. As of right now, we are planning on the impact of the solar production starting in September. And that was built into the budget numbers that we have.
Ms. Parati?
Oh, the high school is not, I don't have a tentative date yet. That'll be probably at the end of the summer next fall.
Thank you. The grant that we applied for the SEL counselor, sorry, social worker, what, I'm sorry. Counselor. Do you know when the next round is and when we might hear back if we potentially would get the funding in the second round of?
I'm going to have to call the state. I literally got an email today and let the teacher know she was disappointed, but I will inquire about the timeline for that because I'm just going to hit submit and try to go for it again. In fact, the amount you can ask by district has gone up. It was 120,000. It has gone up for the second round to 250. So I will also be asking for something else within that grant after I confer with my team, most likely to add more ESS support at the high school to have a 3rd clinician in that program on a permanent basis.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be great to know before the end we wrap this up if we can.
It would, I
Right.
knew the board would want to know, and it
So-
has come up in other conversations, so I will get that information to the board prior to our next meeting.
Ms. Weaver?
And just along those lines, do we have a breakdown between the number of counselors versus social worker and like breakdown between SEL counselor and a guidance counselor or career counselor? Because I know our student reps have brought that up and I just want to make sure. I know it's somewhere, but
You will have that next week.
beautiful. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any more hands, no more questions being asked. So thank you, Dr. Brummett, for that presentation. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, your questions and your comments. At this time, I'm going to move on to agenda item D, which is our public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. If you want to call in, the phone number is 860-665-8659. If you are online, please raise your hand and we will call on you. If any of the members of the town council wish to address us at this time with any questions, we want to open that for your opportunity. You want to come to the end of the table?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Brummett and Dr. Fletcher. I appreciate it. Mitch Page, Town Council. I just have a few questions. The first would be, do you have data on the breakdown of special education students by identified disability and those trends and how they're impacting the budget at some point? How that looks when you disaggregate that and what, if any, well, not if any, we probably can say to what extent the pandemic have driven those numbers, as well as some of the other demographic issues that are in flux and changing. And then the second question is, in terms of the middle school academies, at the current staffing and funding levels, are those fully and completely staffed and supported to support the stated goals and mission of those programs? I think you mentioned an engineering position at the high school. It sounded like to support the academies. That wasn't clear to me if that's at the high school or supporting the middle school. Maybe I misunderstood it.
I could probably answer that now,
Sure.
Mr. Page. The position that was not put in the budget would have affected the high school. The middle school is fully staffed. They have teachers that address the science and math intensified needs. The position that would have been added at the high school would have allowed more sections of engineering classes. What we've been able to do is a teacher that works part-time has an engineering ability, so we've been leveraging him. We'll probably try to do that next year, so it won't be, to still allow that program to continue to, as kids age up, they want to take the higher level engineering classes. We also do have opportunity to send them off to Central. They have a dual enrollment program there that our kids can take advantage of as well, and engineering is a course that is offered.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad it was brought up by Ms. Mankey, the issue of, I think you brought it up, potential or anticipated growth of the town. The previous town manager and council have done an excellent job of working on growing our town as we've intended to do, and that continues to happen. And I think as we've discussed and y'all are discussing here, it's important that we anticipate that and look at the impacts on not just our school system, but all services. So some of that's crystal ball stuff. Some of it, though, I think we can say with some confidence there are going to be more kids in our town. We're going to have to provide the excellent services to them as well. So let's pay attention to that. I'm glad also counselors and social workers were brought up. I'm a little biased on that, but there are National Association of Social Worker Guild recommendations for that based on best practice and outcome measures. And so I appreciate that you're reflecting on that and looking to see how we can make sure those continue to support our kids and our families. And also, last question, is attendance issues. If you brought it up, I'm sorry I missed her. It may be in this packet, but I know we've seen in the news and on social media and so forth, lots of challenges with certain districts in the area with attendance, some dramatically for a lot of obvious reasons because of what we've all been going through. To what extent is that impacting us and how are we addressing it? And specifically for tonight, do we have the staffing and the resources available to reach out to those kids and families and engage them to make sure that we're helping our attendance numbers increase? So, and that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the 1.9% budget over the last several years. It's certainly lower than the 8.7% consumer price index that I just heard about in the United States. So that's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And to the question about absenteeism, yes, we are experiencing and have some schools that have been identified as having some chronic absenteeism issues, and we are looking at it through various mental health challenges. And we do a lot of outreach to families when there is an absenteeism issue, but unfortunately, we've been impacted by that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work. I appreciate it very much.
Hi, good evening. Beth Del Buno, 327 Walsh Ave. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough. This packet actually will help a lot too, just in terms of revisiting and looking at things. I also wanted to say how much I appreciated the presentation prior to budget by Representative Curry and Ms. Hammersley. I think that's something that I may not even have known was coming forward as a House bill. So I appreciate being able to hear that presentation, and certainly we'll do a little more research on it, but at face value, it really looks like something worthy of consideration and worthy of our support. So definitely we'll take a closer look at that and how we can help support that moving forward. And thank you for all the questions so far that have been coming forward. I think lots of good discussion so far. I heard one of the questions was asked about enrollment. I'm wondering, as we look toward trends, if we could look at or maybe get enrollment data for longer than just a couple of years, but maybe 10 years or so. I know one of your slides went back to 78. I'm not asking for that, but maybe 10 years or so, just so we can kind of see how it's declined as we are now looking at a possible bump, given some of the development that we're looking at. So just kind of to see the trend of that. And then also, earlier in the presentation, you mentioned that some of the staffing that was funded through the ARPA and ESSER funds. And I'm wondering if we can look at how many staff that is. I know you had mentioned, Dr. Brummett, that some of that funding is still in place for this coming budget year, but as we're starting to plan for future years also, just to kind of have a sense of how many staff are funded through those programs and what that would look like moving forward if we wanted to keep all that staff, which I think the intent initially was not to do that, but, I know needs are there. So just looking at what that looks like, what the dollar amounts are, and, in future funding, what that'll be, I think that would be helpful for our consideration too. And I think that's all for me, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yes, we just had one come up online. Fiona York?
Hi there. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you to the board and Dr. Rummert for your presentation. I just had a comment this evening. I'm a Newington resident, Fiona York, 150 Dowd Street. I have a young child who's not in Newington Public Schools yet, but I am also an educator. And I'm sure some of you are aware of the Connecticut Education Association survey that was sent out in November 2022 with some startling results that 74% of the teachers who responded to the survey in Connecticut said they are planning to leave the field of teaching in the next year. I think most of you there have heard this news locally and nationally that teachers are burnt out. Dr. Brummett mentioned it in your presentation. And I just am wondering what we can do or what Newington can do to continue supporting our teachers. Their happiness and their flexibility are so important to our students. And I know that based on the survey, a few of the recommendations, obviously, of course, is more funding and also more staffing. And I think that ensuring that our teachers who have been with Newington for a number of years, they continue teaching in Newington because their institutional knowledge and their ability to provide mentorship to new or incoming teachers is so important to the continuity of education in Newington. I just wanted to express my concern as a parent and educator that we're all thinking of this and what more can we do to support our teachers in Newington. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else online? All right. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to agenda item E, which are remarks by board members. I'll give you each an opportunity if you want to make remarks at this time. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you very much for that presentation at the beginning. I think that was incredibly important. I'm so glad that the message got out, obviously to all of us in the room, but to anybody that was tuning in online. Hopefully we can continue to spread the word and hopefully get this bill passed. I think it would make a huge difference. Anecdotally, having worked in two very different districts as far as economics go, I can see how this bill would greatly benefit the entire state, truly as a whole. And I feel like I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of good reading to do this weekend to plan and to move forward. Really wanted to thank, I think it was Miss York that just spoke? Yeah. I hope I'm not okay. Thank you for saying that. And I would have to say ditto to everything that she just said. I think that's incredibly important. There is a mass exodus from the teaching profession right now in this country. And the data that she just shared, just looking at Connecticut, I think is really important. Our students are incredibly important, but so are those that are there every day. And I think that I speak for most teachers when I say that you kind of pour your entire life into that profession. There's just kind of no other way to do it. And especially, I was talking to Representative Turco on the way in, and we were talking about things getting back to normal. There's not going to be a normal. We have the challenge in front of us to close these learning gaps for our students, for all of our students. And also to help them close those gaps in social emotional development, which are impacting their academics and impacting their success in school and in the world, as we prepare them to be a well-rounded citizen. So that's huge. And then I just want to say thank you to all of our town council members that are here tonight. I think that this is a really good step forward. I'm looking forward to working together. I think what sets Newington apart from any other town and why I chose, when we were looking for houses, I said to my husband, we can get any house you want in Newington, which left the market really small. But the huge driver of that was the schools. That's huge. And I think if you talk to any parents in Newington, they will tell you that's why they're here. And so I think all of us coming together tonight is a really wonderful thing. I'm excited to entertain questions, to ask questions, to collaborate, and to put our kids and our teachers first and continue to make Newington the wonderful place that it is. So sorry for that long rant, but had a lot of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Leverrier.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. Mrs. Hupfegner, I love that. Any house you want in Newington, I love that. That was great. I do, what I want to say, one thing that from the whole presentation, and again, thank you for the presentation. I'm going through my notes here. With the Newington High School Engineering Aerospace Academy teacher not being a budget priority, that upsets me. This is something that could bring up our test scores. Our test scores have been down. We need to bring our test scores up, and that's something that perhaps should be reconsidered in the budget. Again, I'm just going to say it one more time. I do want to give a shout out to our elementary schools. The multilingual to English proficiency numbers. I love it. And thank you very much for your services. And those are my two comments. Oh, by the way, it wouldn't be a Board of Education meeting without a sports update. Best hockey game of the year. Connor did win. I know you're very upset, Ms. Drozd, but great overtime game. Unfortunately, Connor did win, but I will promise you that Newington still has the state championship trophy in the locker.
Thank you to our perpetual sports broadcaster, Ms. Drozd.
I want to thank you. You couldn't see me because I don't have my camera, but you did see my face pretty well there, my friend, that I did not like that update. So as we go into budget season, I know that it's always, we got to sharpen our pencils, and, if we had magic wands, we would make, and all the money in the world, life would be a lot easier. So I want to thank you for, I think you said it like 15 times now that you've done away with one of the instructional coaches. It's like true to my own heart. And we do have to get creative in where we're looking at our money. But as we move forward, we get heated and we get angry with each other. And at the end of the day, we're all here for the town and the students and the children and the teachers, and we all have different ways of going about it, but just always just keeping in mind that we are all in this for one reason, and it's the students and the teachers.
Thank you. And every time she mentioned the instructional coach, I looked your way.
I know you did.
Ms. Parati.
Yeah, I just want to echo everyone said thank you for this presentation. I think it was definitely well thought out and very, very informative. And thank you to the town council members who asked questions, because those were fantastic questions that you asked. And I think coming here is definitely awesome that you guys are able to take time to do so before we start deliberating, because you gave us some things to think about. And obviously, please contribute again, because it's very helpful to have your thoughts before the presentation after we've done all of our work. So it's very helpful up front. And Dr. Brummett, thank you for bringing the presenters to the beginning of the meeting. I think it's just very important to hear what's going on at the state level, because, in Newington, we obviously have our own stuff going on, but there's a lot going on that impacts us directly too. So it's good to hear that. And I look forward to you continuing to bring that to us, because it's very informative. And just funny side note, when I was looking at houses, I was like, you can pick any house in Newington in the Anne Arundel district, because that's just my favorite school, as everyone knows. But so we got lucky and we found one. But
yes, we're all here for the schools and the children and the teachers and staff and everyone. So look forward to a great collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver.
Feel like everyone's having a Jessica Weaver tonight. We're all just, I know. I just want to echo the sentiments of what board members have already said. So much gratitude to Dr. Brummett, to the admin, to the staff that created this presentation. I know you don't take this lightly. This is a lot of behind the scenes work. So just want to first say thank you for that. Thank you to Rep. Curry and to the State and School Finance Project. As I said, I've been following the work for many years, and I know they gave a presentation a couple months back, I want to say. I think Ms. Parati was present at that. I think everyone. It was a really great presentation back then, and I think we all joked like only 2 people in the state know the ECS formula, and hopefully more of us will get to know it with this change. At least that's my hope. And I think going into this budget season, as others have said, it's going to be difficult. If it was up to me or to any one of us, I think just based on anything, we'd want everything funded all the time. And this is really what the struggle comes into. I want every single student to be met where they're at. And that's truly why we talk about equity so much, because every student has different needs. And those needs are definitely increasing as we see, and just some of those very drastic statistic changes. So meeting every student where they're at is really what I think is our goal. And I think, one of those things like Richard brought up the aerospace engineer, or Mr. Rivera, sorry. And, I think about the world language. We're one of 2 schools in our district reference group, our DIRG. It's like us and Shelton that don't have a 7th grade world language program. We're one of the only 2. Everyone else in the 25 has it. And so when we look at where Newington can achieve, there's so many other places where we can achieve. There's so many other places where we are achieving more. And it's really just a give and take on what we can do to meet our students' needs. And as those needs increase, other things get sacrificed. And I absolutely hate that, but it's part of why we're sitting at this table. So want to continue to thank everyone who went and made this presentation possible. And as we look forward to the next couple, I like how we called it workshops. Makes it sound so much nicer. But it'll be a lot of the nitty gritty, and all of the staff I just want to give a thanks to before you come and present, because I know you'll be presenting on all of those and you put your plans, proposals in months ago to try and get to this point. And lastly, to thank all of our town council members, mayor, thank you so much for coming. We really, really appreciate it. I think it just shows that we can work together and sets a great tone for where to come. And I will plug that we will have more meetings together as a joint meeting. I know our board chair and mayor can talk about setting that up, but I really look forward to that, because I think ultimately we're all impacted by the quality of our education system. And I truly believe it's the key to the economic vitality of our town, as I will always say. So thank you so much to all who came, and we look forward to a productive and and more progress in our budget process. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brandon.
Really quick, just Beth had mentioned that after COVID, there's no more normal. And I think, it's up to us to create the new normal. And I think that, everybody has kind of talked about it, the fact that we're sitting here, but we have town councilors, future town councilors, state reps here, everybody here trying to work together. And I think it's up to us to create that new normal in Newington, and to show that, I'm not saying that, you rubber stamp a budget, but I am saying that I think that I hope everybody can agree that education should be a priority for our entire town. So how we come together, how we figure out a way to make sure that we're doing what we can for the students and for the teachers, I think is up to us at this table and the people in this room and those that couldn't join us tonight. And then really quick, I just wanted to also give a shout out to Miss York. I don't know Miss York, but Miss York, you're speaking my language. I love it. I think that the administration is trying to do a lot of work with trying to support our teachers. It was mentioned briefly today with the wellness committee. And I think, again, I don't want to speak for everybody at this table, but it has been something that we've talked about that I think a lot of people in the community, but also, again, as I mentioned, people at this table, feel really strongly about, feeling strongly about supporting our educators, because supporting our educators does have an effect on supporting our students as well. And I think at some point when that committee gets fully fleshed out, maybe there will be opportunities for people in the community to be a part of it, to kind of help and bring a different perspective. And I'll voluntold Miss York to join that committee, because it sounds like you've got the right idea on what's important and what we should be doing in this town. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your participation tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to come out here and be with us. We will convene again next Tuesday at 6 p.m., and we will begin the wonderful process of working through the budget.
Motion to
I'm looking
adjourn.
forward to it.
Motion to adjourn.
I beat you. I beat you. Come on.
No, motion to adjourn.
I got you.
I don't have to decide who did. Who seconded it?
I did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night. Thank you again.
Quick on that, he was